Daniel Cross sat on the wooden bench outside his small suburban house, watching the early morning sun touch the tops of the trees. The air was fresh, carrying the faint smell of wet soil and blooming flowers from his small garden. His hands were rough from hours of planting, but he didn't mind. It was the kind of work that grounded him, a quiet contrast to the chaos he once knew. In this peaceful neighborhood, he was just another father who cared deeply for his little girl. Nobody would ever guess that Daniel Cross had once been a Delta Force commander, someone who had faced situations that could kill a person a dozen times over. Here, in this sunlit quiet, he was simply Daniel, a man devoted to his daughter. Inside, the house, Lily Cross hummed as she brushed her hair in front of the bathroom mirror. Her long black hair shone under the sunlight streaming through the window. She was 10 years old, full of life, laughter, and curiosity. She had her father's sharp brown eyes, the same ones that could seem so calm and gentle one moment and so serious the next. Lily had no idea of the extraordinary life her father had led before she was born, and Daniel intended to keep it that way. Some parts of a man's past were dangerous, even to the people he loved most. "Dad," Lily called, her voice carrying through the house. "I'm ready." Daniel set down his mug of coffee and stood, stretching his broad shoulders. He smiled warmly at his daughter as she came running down the stairs, backpack bouncing against her back. Her excitement was contagious, and for a brief moment, Daniel felt the weight of his old life slip from his shoulders. This was what mattered now. "You look ready for anything," Daniel said, ruffling her hair. "Where are you off to this morning?" "The park. My friends are waiting," Lily said, her eyes sparkling. "I promised Mia I'd help her with her new kite." Daniel nodded. "All right, but remember, stick to the path, don't run ahead, and stay where I can see you from the street if you need me." "I will," Lily said, waving as she ran out the door. Daniel watched her go, his heart swelling with pride and a little fear. Even though the neighborhood was safe, even though he had trained for situations far worse than this, the thought of anything happening to her was unbearable. Returning to the garden, Daniel knelt and began planting tulips, the soil, soft between his fingers. He liked to keep his hands busy, to let the routine soothe his mind. Memories of his mission sometimes crept in uninvited, fleeting flashes of distant deserts, dense forests, and foreign cities where every second could mean life or death. But today, he pushed them away. Today, there was only Lily and the gentle rhythm of the garden. Hours passed, birds sang, and the occasional neighbor waved as they went about their day. Daniel felt a rare sense of contentment. He had sacrificed so much in his life, had faced impossible choices in faraway lands, and yet all of that had led him here, to this small house, to this quiet street, and to the chance to watch his daughter grow. He treasured it more than anything. Suddenly, a distant sound broke the calm, the sound of hurried footsteps and shouting. Daniel paused, his instincts kicking in instantly, a muscle memory he couldn't ignore. It was faint, but he knew something was wrong. He dropped the trowel and looked up toward the street. From the corner of his eye, he saw neighbors rushing toward the source of the noise. Confused, he stood and walked toward the edge of the yard, squinting against the sun. His heart began to race. There, a block away, he saw uniformed officers, and among the crowd, he caught sight of Lily. "Lily!" he shouted, but she didn't hear him over the chaos. Daniel's mind went sharp and cold, the kind of clarity only a man who had been trained to act under pressure could feel. He scanned the scene quickly. The officers were surrounding someone. They didn't see him yet. His stomach sank as he realized it was Lily, holding her backpack, looking frightened and confused. Without thinking, Daniel sprinted forward, his long legs eating up the distance between him and his daughter. The world narrowed, and every sound became sharper. The shouting, the clicking of radios, the anxious murmurs of neighbors. When he was close enough, he could see the officers trying to communicate, but Lily didn't understand them. She was crying softly now, backing away instinctively. "Lily, stay calm," Daniel shouted, his voice firm but controlled. "I'm coming." Finally, he reached her, slipping between the officers with practiced precision, holding up his hands to show he was no threat. "She's my daughter. Step back," he said, his voice calm but commanding. Even in this ordinary suburban street, his authority carried weight, honed over years of impossible missions. The officers hesitated, confused. Daniel bent down to Lily's level. "It's okay, sweetie. I've got you. Let's go home." Lily clung to him, sobbing, and he felt her small frame shake. He whispered reassuringly, "It's okay. I'm here now. Nothing's going to hurt you." After a tense moment, the officers slowly lowered their hands. Daniel nodded politely but firmly. "Thank you. But she's safe now. Let's not make this worse." As he led Lily away, he could feel the eyes of the neighborhood on him. Nobody knew who he truly was, and he didn't intend to tell them. They only saw a father protecting his child. Daniel's chest tightened, not from exertion, but from a surge of emotions: relief, fear, and an unwavering love for his daughter. Once inside their house, he sat Lily down on the couch and brushed her hair back from her tear-streaked face. "You're safe, Lily, I promise." "Always," he said quietly. She nodded against his chest, clinging to him. Daniel held her, feeling the fragile yet unbreakable bond between them. He knew that nothing in his life had prepared him for this. Not battles overseas, not impossible missions, not near-death experiences. Nothing compared to the terror of seeing your child in danger. Outside, the street had returned to its quiet state, but Daniel knew the world had changed. For now, the danger was over, but deep down, he understood that this was just the beginning of a story far larger than this quiet neighborhood, and he would be ready. The hospital smelled of antiseptic and quiet urgency. Daniel's hands gripped the handles of the wheelchair as he rushed down the long corridor, his heart thumping with a mix of fear and controlled anger. Around him, nurses moved with practiced calm, unaware of the storm that had just entered the building. Lily sat in the chair, small and fragile, clutching her stuffed rabbit. Her arm was wrapped tightly in a clean white bandage, and her eyes were wide, a mixture of shock and confusion. She had barely spoken since the incident, and Daniel could feel her trembling beneath his hands. "Lily, it's okay," he said softly, lowering his voice so the world outside wouldn't hear. "You're safe. I promise you. Nothing is going to happen to you now." Her lips trembled and she buried her face against his chest. I didn't do anything, Daddy. I don't understand." Daniel pressed a gentle kiss to her forehead. "I know, sweetheart. You did nothing wrong. None of this is your fault." A nurse approached, smiling nervously. "Mr. Cross, we're about to check her vitals and make sure there's no internal injury. The bullet grazed her arm, but we need to be certain." Daniel nodded, stepping back but keeping a protective eye on Lily. As the nurse worked, he surveyed the room, his mind running faster than the machinery surrounding them. Something about the story didn't sit right. According to the officers' report, the situation had been a misunderstanding, a simple mix-up, a case of mistaken identity. But Daniel had seen enough in his life to know when things weren't as simple as they seemed. "Did they explain why it happened?" Daniel asked, his voice calm but firm. The nurse hesitated. "They said it was an accident. They didn't give much detail, but the officers are cooperating with hospital staff. It's a delicate situation." Daniel nodded silently, processing her words. He knew there would be official stories. That was always the way. People wanted neat explanations, but life rarely worked that way, and Daniel had learned to trust his instincts. Something about this was off. Once Lily was settled in a small recovery room, Daniel stepped out into the corridor. He pulled out his phone and called a contact from his old life, someone he could trust without hesitation. His fingers moved quickly, dialing numbers he hadn't touched in years. When the line connected, his voice was low but precise. "It's Daniel. I need your help. Something happened today, and it's messy. I need you to dig, quietly." On the other end, the response was immediate. "You sure you want to do this now, Daniel?" "I don't have a choice," Daniel said. "It involves my daughter." Within minutes, he had the first few details. Security camera footage from the park had been pulled, or more accurately, went missing. Witness statements were already being rewritten to fit the officer's version of events. This wasn't just a mistake. It was an attempt to cover something up. Daniel's jaw tightened, his mind working through every angle. He had faced enemies, who had entire armies at their disposal, but protecting his child was different. The rules didn't matter anymore. Every instinct he had, honed over years of service, told him that the official story was false. He returned to Lily's room, sitting beside her as she hugged her stuffed rabbit. "Daddy, will they get in trouble?" she asked, her voice small and unsure. Daniel smiled faintly, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "They will in their own way. But for now, your job is to rest. I'm taking care of everything else." Lily nodded, leaning against him. For a moment, Daniel allowed himself to breathe. The relief of knowing she was physically safe was a rare gift, and he held on to it tightly. But the world outside that room was already moving fast, spinning a story that left out the truth. Later that evening, Daniel returned home with Lily in his arms, her small body heavy but comforting. He settled her into bed, tucking her in carefully. She drifted into a light sleep, her breathing steady. Watching her sleep, Daniel's mind began planning. He needed to find the truth, and he needed to do it quietly. The local authorities would not voluntarily admit their mistakes, and the media could make things worse if they got involved too early. He pulled out his laptop and began making notes, cross-referencing the few pieces of information he had. There were gaps in the report, inconsistencies in the timeline, and, most importantly, the missing security footage. Someone didn't want the truth revealed, and Daniel intended to find out why. Hours passed as he worked in the dim light of his home, office. Maps, names, and details filled the screen. Every connection he could remember from his past life, contacts who owed him favors, old colleagues with skills in surveillance and investigation, were being quietly noted. He didn't want to alarm anyone unnecessarily. He needed results before drawing attention. At some point, exhaustion began to creep in, but Daniel pushed it aside. He had faced worse conditions than this. He had survived situations where a single mistake meant death, but nothing had ever been more important than protecting the life of his daughter. The thought of her trembling in fear today had been unbearable, and it fueled him now. As the night deepened, Daniel allowed himself a single moment to look around the house. It was quiet, peaceful, and normal, the kind of life he had fought so hard to build. Outside, the street was silent, lit by the soft glow of the porch lights. Inside, Lily slept safely, unaware of the storm that had touched her life. Daniel closed his laptop and sat back, letting the weight of the day settle. Tomorrow, he would begin his quiet investigation in earnest. He would speak to neighbors, review every possible camera in the area, and start tracking down the officer's movements. Every detail mattered. Every mistake in the official story could be leveraged to find the truth. He looked at his daughter's sleeping form one last time and whispered, "I've got you, Lily. No one will ever hurt you again. I promise." Outside, the night remained calm, but Daniel knew it would not last. The world had changed today, and he was ready to step back into a life he had long left behind, if only to protect what mattered most, The morning light cut through the blinds of Daniel Cross's home office, illuminating the organized chaos he had created overnight. Maps were spread across the desk, papers covered with notes, and his laptop displayed multiple tabs of local, news, city records, and social media posts. Every detail mattered. Every overlooked fact could be the difference between uncovering the truth and letting the story be buried. Daniel sipped his coffee, the bitter warmth grounding him as he studied the first set of police reports. They were neat, formal, and almost too perfect. That, to Daniel, was proof enough that something was wrong. He had been in countless operations where reports were falsified, manipulated, or erased. It was a skill he knew too well, and he wasn't about to let it fool him now. His phone buzzed. A message from an old military colleague appeared. "I've got some contacts who can help. Are you ready to dig?" Daniel typed back quickly, "Yes," quietly. "I need names, timelines, anything that can prove the truth." Even with his training, approaching the investigation required careful planning. The officers involved weren't malicious people. They were likely just following orders or acting out of panic. But mistakes had consequences, and someone needed to be held accountable for what had happened to Lily. By mid-morning, Daniel was outside, walking through the quiet streets of his neighborhood. He kept his eyes sharp, scanning the surroundings with a practiced gaze. Everything seemed normal. Kids playing, neighbors tending gardens, the occasional car passing by. But he knew the ordinary world often hid extraordinary truths. He stopped at the park, the very place where Lily had been grazed. The swings swayed gently in the wind, and the smell of cut grass filled the air. Parents watched their children, oblivious to the chaos that had erupted there just the day before. Daniel crouched near the edge of the playground, studying the sight lines, noting where officers had stood, where children had run, and the angles of nearby buildings. "Mr. Cross?" a timid voice called. Daniel turned to see Mrs. Evans, an elderly neighbor, standing a few feet away. Her hands were clasped nervously, and her eyes darted around. "Yes, Mrs. Evans," he said politely. "Can I help you?" She hesitated. I saw what happened yesterday. I didn't get too close. I didn't want to interfere. But maybe I can tell you what I saw from my window." Daniel nodded. "Please, anything you remember could help." Mrs. Evans recounted the incident, her voice trembling slightly. She described how the officers had shouted, how Lily had frozen in fear, and how quickly the situation escalated. Daniel listened intently, making mental notes. Small details mattered: the timing, the positioning, the hesitations. Even minor inconsistencies could reveal the truth. "Thank you, Mrs. Evans," he said finally, offering a reassuring smile. "You've been very helpful." Back at home, Daniel compared her account to the official reports. The discrepancies were obvious. The officers had exaggerated certain actions and omitted key moments. Someone was shaping a story that suited them, not the reality of what had happened. By afternoon, Daniel had contacted a few old friends from his Delta Force days. They were scattered across the country, each with a skill set that could help him track information quietly. Some were skilled in digital forensics, others in surveillance, and a few still had connections in law enforcement who trusted them implicitly. Within hours, a small network had formed, a quiet army of allies willing to assist him without exposing themselves. Daniel felt a familiar rush of purpose. This wasn't combat, not in the traditional sense, but the strategy was similar. Gather information, observe quietly, identify weaknesses, and most importantly, protect the innocent. As the evening approached, Daniel received a call from the hospital. Lily's doctor, Dr. Mason, wanted to discuss her progress. Daniel arrived promptly, finding Lily sitting up in her bed, drawing quietly in a notebook. She looked more relaxed than the day before, but her eyes still held a shadow of fear. "She's doing well," Dr. Mason said, smiling gently. "Physically, she's fine, but there's some trauma. It's normal, given what happened. Daniel nodded. Is there anything we can do to help her feel safe again? Just give her time, Dr. Mason replied, and reassurance. She needs to know she's protected. Daniel glanced at Lily, then back at the doctor. He had spent years training, planning, and executing missions where the stakes were life or death. Protecting his daughter felt more urgent, more critical than anything he had ever faced. Later that night, Daniel sat at his desk once again. The neighborhood was quiet, but his mind was active, tracing paths, connections, and possibilities. He began contacting local security companies to check for overlooked cameras. He called friends in media monitoring to see if there were any citizen videos of the incident. Every lead was worth pursuing. Hours passed, and Daniel finally leaned back, stretching his tired muscles. He thought about the future, about the challenge ahead. The investigation wouldn't be easy. There were people who wanted the truth, buried. But Daniel's training and instincts gave him confidence. He had faced impossible odds before and had always found a way. Most importantly, he had Lily. That knowledge alone gave him strength. No matter the obstacles, he would uncover the truth. He would make sure that what happened to her yesterday would never happen again. Not to Lily, not to any other child. As he looked out the window at the street below, he whispered softly, more to himself than anyone else. I will fix this. I will find the truth, and no one will take her safety from me again. Outside, the quiet night held no answers, but inside, Daniel's resolve burned brighter than ever. He knew the path. Ahead would be difficult, but he was ready to face it, for his daughter, for justice, and for peace of mind. The following morning, Daniel Cross woke with a sharp sense of purpose. He had spent the previous night mapping every detail of the incident, from the positions of the officers to the shadows of nearby buildings. Every small inconsistency mattered. He knew that uncovering the truth would require patience, careful observation, and the quiet use of the skills he had spent years perfecting. But for Daniel, the stakes had never been higher. His daughter's safety and innocence were on the line. He glanced toward Lily's room. She was still asleep, her breathing steady, the faint sunlight illuminating her peaceful face. Daniel felt a pang of protectiveness. Yesterday had shown him just how fragile her world could be and how quickly it could shatter. He resolved silently, nothing would threaten her again. After breakfast, he left the house under the guise of running errands. His real goal was the local precinct. Daniel had spent hours analyzing the area's security cameras, city maps, and traffic footage. A pattern had started to emerge. There were multiple blind spots near the park, places where the official story could have been shaped without witnesses noticing. He intended to verify each of them. Walking through the neighborhood, Daniel kept his eyes sharp. Everything seemed ordinary. Children playing, neighbors chatting, the soft hum of morning traffic. But he knew appearances could be deceiving. Even in this peaceful town, there were truths hidden behind calm faces and carefully worded reports. He observed the precinct from a distance, noting patrol schedules, officer movements, and entrances. Daniel had learned long ago that information was power, and today he intended to gather as much as possible. By mid-morning, he had a lead. And anonymous tip suggested that one of the officer's body cameras had malfunctioned during the incident. The explanation seemed plausible to the public, but Daniel's instincts told him otherwise. A malfunctioned camera often meant tampered evidence. He jotted down the officer's name and the time of the incident, adding it to the growing list of questions that needed answers. Returning home, Daniel checked in with Lily. She was coloring, at the kitchen table, her concentration absorbing her from the worries of yesterday. He smiled softly at her. Hi, sweetie. Feeling better today? Lily nodded, showing him her drawing. A bright park scene with swings, slides, and smiling children. Daniel crouched beside her, careful not to disturb her focus. "That's beautiful. Are those the swings you like?" "Yes," Lily said, her voice small but confident. "And that's me, Daddy, holding my rabbit." Daniel felt a warmth spread through his chest. Moments like this reminded him why every risk, every late-night plan, and every ounce of effort mattered. Protecting Lily wasn't just about solving the problem. It was about preserving her world, her innocence, and her happiness. Later that day, Daniel contacted one of his old Delta Force colleagues, Marcus, a specialist in digital forensics. Marcus was cautious, precise, and completely trustworthy, the perfect ally for the delicate work ahead. "I've found something odd," Marcus said after scanning the preliminary footage Daniel had obtained. "There's a gap in the timeline. The cameras were recording normally, then nothing for about 2 minutes. After that, it picks up again, but someone has edited the footage. Small cuts, minor angles removed. It's subtle, but it's there." Daniel's jaw tightened. "So the official story is based on edited footage?" "Exactly," Marcus replied. "Whoever did this knew what they were hiding, and they wanted to make sure no one could see the real sequence of events." Daniel exhaled slowly. "Then we need to find raw data, unedited. Any place it could be stored. Backups, personal devices, even dash cams from nearby cars. We have to reconstruct the full timeline." Marcus nodded. "I'll start tracking it tonight, quietly. We don't want attention yet." While Marcus worked on the technical side, Daniel returned to the neighborhood, speaking to people who had been in the park or nearby. Each conversation was gentle, careful, and non-threatening. Parents, joggers, and local shopkeepers all had pieces of the puzzle, snippets of observation, fleeting glimpses, and details overlooked at the time. Slowly, a picture began to emerge, revealing the sequence of events as it had truly unfolded. Evening, Daniel sat at his desk, reviewing notes, maps, and statements. Every detail, no matter how small, added clarity. He could see how Lily had been misidentified, how panic had escalated, and how the officers' responses had been manipulated. In official reports, it was methodical, but he could feel the tension building. The story that would be revealed had the potential to expose negligence, fear, and deception. Not just protect Lily, but prevent such incidents from happening to anyone else. As he worked, Lily wandered in, holding her stuffed rabbit. "Daddy, can you read me a story?" Daniel smiled, closing his laptop gently. "Of course, sweetie." He lifted her onto his lap and opened a book. As he read aloud, he felt a sense of calm settle over him. This was his mission too, to provide stability, comfort, and love amid chaos. But even as he read, his mind remained alert. He knew the path ahead would grow more difficult. There were people who wanted the truth hidden, and those people would not be easily swayed. Daniel's instincts, honed through years of missions, planning, and high-stakes decision-making, told him to proceed cautiously, strategically, and with absolute focus. Night fell and the house grew quiet. Lily slept in her room, the soft glow of a nightlight casting shadows on the walls. Daniel sat at his desk, reviewing every detail again, outlining the next steps. Security camera angles needed verification. Witnesses needed gentle questioning. Technical data had to be cross-checked. Every lead mattered. He allowed himself one final glance at his daughter. "Tomorrow," he whispered softly, "we find the rest of the truth. I promise." Outside, the neighborhood was still. Streetlights cast a gentle glow on the quiet streets. Inside, Daniel's resolve burned bright. He had faced impossible odds before, but now the challenge was personal, emotional, and deeply urgent. The stakes were higher than ever, but he was ready. And in the heart of the night, Daniel Cross made a silent vow. No deception, no cover-up, no threat would ever touch Lily again. The early morning air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of wet earth and blooming flowers. Daniel Cross stood at the edge of the park, observing every detail with sharp precision. The swings swayed gently in the breeze, and the laughter of children playing echoed faintly in the distance. Everything appeared calm, ordinary, and peaceful. But Daniel knew better. Behind the surface, there were hidden truths, manipulated stories, and the lingering fear that had shaken his daughter. Just days ago. Today, Daniel was determined to uncover the final pieces of the puzzle. He had collected witness statements, mapped camera angles, and reviewed unedited footage from nearby stores. Every lead brought clarity, but also tension. The deeper he delved, the more he realized that the cover-up went further than he had first imagined. This wasn't a simple mistake. It was a chain of decisions made to hide negligence, fear, and panic. Daniel crouched behind a large oak tree, his eyes scanning the park. He noted where the officers had been, where Lily had run, and how quickly the situation had escalated. Every step, every motion mattered. He replayed the footage in his mind, overlaying it with witness statements, reconstructing the scene piece by piece. A soft voice interrupted his thoughts. "Mr. Cross?" Daniel turned to see Mia's mother, a concerned woman who had witnessed the incident from her porch the day before. I think I have something that might help." Daniel nodded, inviting her to continue. She handed him her phone, containing a short video she had captured, a view from her porch that showed the officers approaching the park just before the chaos began. It was brief, but it revealed critical details that were missing from the official reports. Daniel's eyes narrowed as he watched. The footage confirmed his suspicions. The officers had acted quickly, but the escalation could have been avoided. The official story had omitted key moments where hesitation and communication could have prevented the incident entirely. The truth was unfolding before him, raw and undeniable. Returning home, Daniel shared the footage with Marcus, his old colleague and digital forensics expert. "This is it," Daniel said quietly. "This proves what really happened." Marcus examined the video closely. "It's clear," he said. "The edits in the official report don't match this. Whoever controlled the narrative wanted the public to believe it was all Lily's fault, or at least that it was unavoidable. But the evidence tells a different story." Daniel leaned back, letting the weight of the moment settle. He knew the next step was critical. The evidence had to be presented carefully. If he exposed it too publicly, it could spiral out of control, affecting innocent people. But if he didn't act, the truth would remain buried, and the officers responsible for the chaos might never be held accountable. He sat in silence for a moment, thinking of Lily. She had endured fear and confusion, her trust in the world shaken. Daniel realized that the turning point had arrived. He had to confront the situation directly, using strategy, skill, and precision, the same principles that had guided him in his past life. Later that evening, Daniel contacted the police chief's office. He requested a private meeting, presenting himself as a concerned father with evidence of an incident. The secretary hesitated but finally agreed to schedule a meeting. Daniel knew that the chief would be wary, and he intended to handle it with care. In the chief's office, Daniel remained calm. He presented the footage, witness statements, and notes he had meticulously gathered. His voice was steady, his demeanor composed, yet every word carried weight. "This is what really happened," Daniel said. "It's not about blame for the sake of punishment. It's about correcting mistakes, ensuring accountability, and preventing this from happening again." The chief examined the materials, his expression unreadable. Daniel could sense hesitation. People often resisted uncomfortable truths, but he remained patient, allowing the evidence to speak for itself. "Mr. Cross," the chief finally said, "this is serious. I'll need time to review it fully. These allegations, they could have significant consequences. Daniel nodded. I understand, but my daughter's safety and the truth for the public can't wait. Every day this story is hidden. The risk remains. The chief's eyes softened slightly. I'll handle it, but carefully. You've made your point. We will investigate fully. Daniel left the office feeling a mixture of relief and apprehension. He had reached the critical turning point, the moment where the truth could no longer be ignored. But he also knew that the story was far from over. The officers involved, the narrative, and the public perception were still factors he had to consider carefully. That night, back at home, he watched Lily sleep peacefully. The fear in her eyes from the day of the incident had faded slightly, replaced by a fragile sense of security. Daniel knew that no matter what happened next, he had taken the first crucial steps to protect her, to ensure justice, and to restore her trust in the world. He sat quietly, reflecting on the events of the past days. The turning point wasn't just about exposing the truth. It was about his own role as a father. Every action, every decision, and every risk he had taken stemmed from the same source, his unwavering love for Lily. Daniel realized that the coming days would be challenging. There would be obstacles, resistance, and perhaps threats he hadn't anticipated. But for the first time since the incident, he felt a sense of clarity. The path forward was visible, and he had the skills, allies, and determination to follow it. He took a deep breath, allowing the weight of the responsibility to settle. The night was quiet, but Daniel knew that the turning point had changed everything. He had moved from observation to action, from planning to confrontation, and from fear to purpose. Finally, he whispered to himself, "This is just the beginning, but no one will ever hurt Lily again. I promise." Outside, the neighborhood remained calm under the soft glow of the streetlights. Inside, Daniel Cross's resolve burned brighter than ever. He had faced impossible odds before, but this challenge was different, personal, emotional, and deeply urgent, and he was ready. The morning sun filtered through the blinds, casting long stripes of light across Daniel Cross's desk. Today was the day. Weeks of careful investigation, careful planning, and quiet persistence had led to this moment. Every witness statement, every piece of footage, and every observation had built a solid case. The truth was ready to be revealed, and Daniel knew that exposing it would finally restore justice for Lily. He double-checked his laptop, ensuring every file was in order. Raw footage from the park, unedited camera angles, and recordings from witnesses were all neatly organized. Marcus had done his part with precision, reconstructing the timeline so that it could no longer be disputed. Daniel felt a mixture of nerves and determination. The stakes were high, but he had prepared thoroughly. There was no room for mistakes. Lily watched quietly from the couch, her small hands clutching her stuffed rabbit. She had started to recover her confidence, though the memory of the incident lingered in her eyes. Daniel gave her a reassuring smile. "It's going to be okay, Lily. Everything will be all right soon." She nodded softly, trusting her father completely. That trust was both comforting and motivating. Daniel knew he was not just fighting for truth. He was fighting to restore her sense of safety and belief in the world around her. By late morning, Daniel arrived at the precinct with everything in hand. The police chief, aware of the seriousness of the evidence, greeted him with a mixture of caution and respect. "Mr. Cross, I've reviewed the preliminary information. Please, let's see the full evidence." Daniel set up his laptop, guiding. The chief and several senior officers through every piece of footage and every witness account. The timeline unfolded clearly, leaving little room for dispute. Officers who had previously reported events in a distorted version now had their actions clearly documented. The narrative of panic and misunderstanding unraveled before their eyes. As the final clip played, showing Lily's hesitant movements and the officer's rapid escalation, the room fell silent. Daniel observed the reactions carefully. Some officers shifted uncomfortably, others nodded slowly, realizing the truth they could no longer deny. The chief's face was serious, reflective, and finally accepting. This shows clearly what happened, the chief said, his voice measured. It is evident that the officer's reports omitted key moments. This must be addressed immediately. Thank you, Mr. Cross, for bringing this to our attention. Daniel remained calm but firm. It's not about punishment for the sake of it. It's about accountability and making sure this doesn't happen again. Lily's safety, and the safety of all children, depends on it. The chief nodded. Agreed. I will initiate a full review and ensure that all responsible officers are appropriately evaluated. The department will also issue a public statement, clarifying the events. You have my word. Relief washed over Daniel, though he remained vigilant. The outcome was positive, but he knew real change required continued awareness and effort. The story would now be corrected in public records, and the officers involved would face the consequences of their actions. Justice was not just about accountability. It was about truth, transparency, and ensuring that fear could not replace careful judgment. Leaving the precinct, Daniel felt a weight lift from his shoulders. The tension that had been building for weeks finally began to ease. He had confronted the problem directly, used every skill at his disposal, and ensured that the narrative reflected reality. Most importantly, Lily's name was cleared, and her experience was validated. Back home, Daniel found Lily in the garden, arranging flowers she had picked earlier. She looked up when he approached, her face lighting up with a genuine smile. "Daddy!" she called, running to hug him. "Is it all done? Are we safe now?" Daniel lifted her gently, holding her close. "Yes, sweetheart. It's all done. You're safe, and the truth is clear. No one will ever twist the story of what happened to you again." Lily buried her face against his chest, a mixture of relief and happiness washing over her. "Thank you, Daddy," she whispered. Daniel kissed the top of her head, feeling a warmth he hadn't felt in days. "Always, Lily. I'll always protect you. That's my promise." Later that evening, Daniel sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and orange. The neighborhood was calm, children playing quietly, neighbors chatting softly. Life had returned to a sense of normalcy, yet Daniel knew that the events of the past weeks would leave a lasting impact, not just for Lily, but for himself. He reflected on the journey, the fear, the tension, the quiet planning, and the careful steps that led to this resolution. It had been more than just an investigation. It had been a test of patience, skill, and unwavering commitment. But the reward was far greater than any challenge he had faced before. The knowledge that his daughter was safe, her dignity restored, and the truth recognized. Daniel looked at Lily again, watching her laugh softly as she played with her rabbit under the fading sunlight. He felt a deep sense of gratitude for her, for the allies who had helped him, and for the clarity that came from acting decisively and wisely. As night fell, the house grew quiet. Daniel watched over his daughter, ensuring she slept peacefully. His mind wandered briefly to the past, to the missions and challenges that had shaped him, but he returned quickly to the present. The lessons from his past had guided him here, but this life, this quiet, protective, and loving life, was his true purpose now. Finally, Daniel whispered softly, more to himself than anyone else. "It's over. The truth is safe, and so is she." Outside, the stars twinkled faintly in the night sky. Inside, the Cross household was filled with peace. Daniel knew there would always be challenges ahead, but for now, justice had been served, and his daughter's safety was secure. The storm had passed, and they could finally breathe. For Daniel, the resolution was more than a conclusion. It was a testament to perseverance, love, and the quiet strength that comes from protecting what truly matters. The morning sun rose gently over the quiet neighborhood, casting golden light across the Cross household. For the first time in weeks, Daniel felt a sense of peace he hadn't experienced since the incident at the park. The chaos, the fear, and the tension had passed. Justice had been served, and his daughter's safety had been restored. But more than that, Daniel realized that healing would take time, for Lily and for himself. He found Lily sitting at the kitchen table, her small, hands carefully arranging crayons as she colored. Her drawing from the day before had already become a small gallery of flowers, swings, and happy children. She looked up when Daniel entered, her eyes bright with a mixture of curiosity and joy. "Good morning, Daddy," she said, her voice filled with innocence and warmth. Daniel smiled, kneeling beside her. "Good morning, Lily. How are you feeling today?" "I feel better," she replied. "The scary part is gone. I know you protected me." Daniel's heart swelled. Her words were simple, but they carried immense weight. She understood in her childlike way the depth of his love and the lengths he had gone to protect her. "Yes, sweetheart, I always will." After breakfast, Daniel decided it was time for a small outing. Nothing adventurous, just a walk in the park under calm, safe conditions. Lily held his hand tightly as they stepped outside, the sun warming their faces. The swings stood still, the slides gleamed in the morning light, and the park felt different this time, calm, safe, and welcoming. "Daddy," Lily asked softly, "can we go on the swings today?" Daniel smiled. "Of course. Let's go have some fun." As they approached the swings, Daniel noticed neighbors watching them with warm smiles, aware of the story that had unfolded in their community. Some waved quietly, others offered gentle nods of acknowledgement. The incident had left a mark, but it had also brought people together in understanding and support. Lily climbed onto a swing, her small legs kicking gently as Daniel pushed her softly. She laughed, a clear, pure sound that lifted Daniel's spirits more than he could describe. For the first time since the incident, he allowed himself to breathe, to feel the relief that comes from knowing the danger was truly over. Higher. "Daddy!" she called, her voice filled with excitement. Daniel laughed softly, pushing her carefully. "Careful, Lily, don't go too high." The moment was simple, yet profound. It reminded him that life's greatest victories were not always about missions, strategy, or skill. Sometimes, the true measure of success was seeing those you loved safe, happy, and thriving. Later that afternoon, Daniel sat with Lily under the shade of a large tree. She leaned against him, her head resting on his shoulder, the warmth of the sun and the gentle breeze creating a perfect moment of peace. "Daddy," she said quietly, "I don't want to be scared anymore. Will you always be there?" Daniel kissed the top of her head, holding her tightly. "Always, Lily. No matter what, I will always be here to protect you. That's my promise." The sincerity in his voice was undeniable, and Lily closed her eyes, trusting him completely. In that quiet moment, Daniel felt a deep sense of fulfillment. He had faced the worst fears imaginable, navigated a dangerous path, and emerged victorious, not with weapons or strategy alone, but with love, patience, and unwavering determination. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in hues of pink and orange, Daniel reflected on the past weeks. The journey had been intense, filled with fear, anger, and tension. But it had also been a testament to resilience, to the power of quiet determination, and to the profound bond between a parent and child. He looked at Lily playing with her stuffed rabbit, her laughter echoing softly in the evening air. The incident would always be a part of their story, but it no longer defined them. They had faced it together and had come out stronger, united by trust, love, and the courage to confront truth. That evening, Daniel prepared dinner with Lily helping at his side. They shared stories, laughter, and plans for the coming days. Simple. Activities once taken for granted now carried deeper meaning. Each moment of normalcy was a victory, a reminder that life continued, full of hope and opportunity. After dinner, Daniel tucked Lily into bed. He stayed beside her, brushing her hair gently and speaking softly until her eyes grew heavy with sleep. "Daddy," she whispered, "thank you for saving me. You're my hero." Daniel smiled, his eyes glistening with emotion. "You're my hero too, Lily. You were brave and you trusted me. That made all the difference." As he turned off the light and closed the door, Daniel felt a profound sense of peace. The storm had passed, justice had been restored, and for the first time in weeks, he allowed himself to hope freely, hope for the future, hope for his daughter, and hope for a life that, while marked by challenges, was filled with love and safety. He stepped outside onto the porch, gazing at the night sky. Stars twinkled faintly, a gentle reminder of life's vastness and beauty. Daniel knew challenges would come again, as they always did, but he also knew this: nothing could break the bond he shared with his daughter, and nothing could take away the lessons learned, the victories earned, or the love that had guided him through every trial. Finally, he whispered into the quiet night, more to himself than anyone else. "We've made it through, Lily, and no matter what comes next, we'll face it together." Inside, Lily slept peacefully, unaware of the battles, fought on her behalf, yet safe and comforted by the unwavering presence of her father. Outside, the night was calm, filled with possibility, and bathed in the quiet strength of love that had triumphed over fear. And so, the Cross household found healing, hope, and the promise of new beginnings, a testament to courage, resilience, and the enduring power of family.